Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jonathan Powell. I'm an Innovation Project Manager at SSEN Transmission. Could you turn to the next slide, please? Next one. Okay, so this project involves 4 partners, including ourselves. The other partners are Carbon Trust, who have carried out a commercial and market review with HVDC cables and XLP LE insulation, which I'll say a little bit more about. A key element of which was stakeholder engagement, which was really instrumental to the work that they were doing. There's the Digital Catapult, who identified SSENT's priorities for a digital supply chain tool set and defined the key features and a potential architecture for that tool set, which we would develop in a future project. And finally, and by no means least, a subcontractor to SSEN was University of Edinburgh, who carried out a technical review of HVDC cables and XLPE, complementing the work of the Carbon Trust. So the problem we face is really is not necessarily a bad problem, but it's the unprecedented uptake of clean energy such as onshore and offshore wind and the journey towards net zero. And this is really creating a large impact and challenge to supply chains. So looking ahead, demand is only going to grow, which places a significant risk on the industry not meeting the government's green targets. And this is not just a problem for our industry alone. And given the supply chain itself is very extensive within the business, the Secure project decided to focus on one key product, which is HVDC cables, which are essential to HVDC projects, such as a Shetland link to the mainland, which is an image taken on the slide there. One of the main components of the HVDC cables is the insulation material, which is the cross-linked polyethylene, so they set XLPE, which is high risk given there's only one major supplier in Europe, and that's Borealis. And all of these factors, I think, really illustrate there's a critical need to de-risk the supply chain and have greater visibility for any future issues. Next slide.
So I'm Gavin Scott. I work in procurement at SSEN. So from the problem Jonathan just identified in the previous slide, along with our partners, we looked at developing a digital supply chain hub based on the component of an HVDC cable as the test case. The digital supply chain hub looked at various options or gadgets which would ultimately support the efficient rollout of new infrastructure projects by giving greater visibility and knowledge of the HVDC cable supply chain. The benefits of the digital supply chain hub would give a greater supply chain resilience and strategic insight into downstream supply chain, potential introduction of new or more sub-suppliers, offering real alternatives to ensure a more resilient and efficient supply chain, and potentially quicker delivery of renewable connections. While the problem initially focused on cross-linked polyethylene in the HVDC market, it became evident that the solutions or gadgets we were exploring could be transferable to other infrastructure markets. Next slide.
All right, around the ways of working as partners. Through this discovery, they were collaborative, iterative, user-centered, united under a vision, and impact-driven. We made use of Agile to integrate learning, changes, and quality in our work. And we made use of design thinking to really drill down on the challenge, identify the shared needs, problem statements, and solution opportunities. Throughout our work, we also check how it aligned with SSEN transmission drivers, initial requirements, expected benefit, and impact on the robust delivery of net zero. Hence, the focus of our work was understanding the market, the supply chain challenge, and really unveiling the hidden opportunities that met the needs. We had Carbon Trust leading with unmatched research, the overview of HVDC and XLP market and stakeholder engagement, and Digital Catapult bringing the best cross-industry supply chain knowledge and exploring the digital supply chain challenge and where advanced technologies could disrupt. And of course, we have SSEN Transmission closely providing their best industry knowledge and learning of what was valuable. Our university team members also bring deeply specialized knowledge that allows us also to ground us. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Nastasia. So yeah, I'm James from the Carbon Trust. So the Carbon Trust in this project, we had 2 main roles. So the one on this slide is we conducted some. We looked at the case study, so looking at the particular case study of HVDC cables and XLPE, we looked at the market. So we started off looking at HVDC cables. We looked at the demand for HVDC cables and XLPE and how that's going to grow over time. We also mapped the supply chain. So this small picture on the bottom left of this slide, this shows you the map of the supply chain that we created. So we looked at the roles, the different roles, all the way through to from the raw materials, all the way through to the end users, and all the way through to decommissioning, and the major actors. We identified all the major actors in this supply chain. And also we looked at the interdependencies, the complex interdependencies between these different roles in the supply chain. And we also looked at the commercial and the regulatory environment. And of course, the University of Edinburgh helped us here, looking at the the technical details associated with XLPE and alternatives that could be used for that purpose of the installation of the HVDC cables. Next slide, please. The other element of the work that the Carbon Trust conducted was stakeholder engagement. So this is just a blow up of the stakeholder map that we created. And what we did is we spoke to part of the supply chain. So we decided to focus on in the discovery phase, we just focused on the TOs, the transmission system operators in the EU and the UK. And our findings were that we asked the TOs about their procurement approach and strategy, about the challenges that they face in procurement, and about the digital tools that they currently use. And all this went on to inform the hub or the gadget that the digital catapult, the digital catapult are developing. So if we were to continue this into the alpha phase, what we'd need to do is to talk to the stakeholders in the other elements of the supply chain. Okay, next slide, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Olivia, and I'm a member of the HVDC cables team in SSE. We initially identified the problem, which is that we have a single supplier of XLP material for all European cable manufacturers, and we have considered the following to see how we can de-risk the problem. Sponsor the new cable using an alternative supply. Another aspect would be the qualification of an alternative XLP supply to demonstrate its long-term performance and reducing the supply chain risk by a digital or material solution. For the digital solution, Digital Catapult took on the task to develop an innovative digital supply chain solution. This would be used to monitor the cable raw material and thus increasing visibility by a supply chain risk management tool. This could introduce more suppliers into the market, which may offer alternative options. For the material solution, the University of Edinburgh is looking into it by considering innovative alternatives to XLP, and existing market alternatives are assessed for stability following the market disruption. Next slide, please.
All right. Obviously, the digital solutions that we explore, thanks to the work that we did with Carbon Trust, it allows us to identify the challenge and define it with SSEN transmission, make sure that within it we identify the shared needs and the key requirements, and then against it map what were the potential opportunities and solutions that could help. Now, Peter is going to introduce you to those solutions and gadgets.
Next slide, please. So my name is Peter Carney from Digital Catapult. A word on gadgets. So just to say, these gadgets are built on the expertise of SSEN, the suppliers that we spoke to, experts within Digital Catapult have expertise in supply chain, and of course, other industry, relevant industries. It was also, of course, based on the output of the Carbon Trust. A word on the gadgets. So basically, we use this term to define a block of capability that solves a specific user need in this constrained resource supply chain space. It is, of course, important to remember that this is not just applicable to XLPE, but any constrained requirement that the energy industry may have. The term gadget does not aim to define nor limit the size and complexity, and some of these gadgets are significant and complicated. But for each gadget, we wanted to define the following attributes. So what is it for? What does it do? Who is it for? What these users are saying, what these users are thinking, what does it do for them? Also known as jobs to be done. We've defined 10 high-level requirements for each of these gadgets, business value drivers, and potential candidate technologies. All of this is in exquisite detail in the report, which can be made available via the project sponsor. Next slide, please. So 6 gadgets were devised. I'm going to talk about 3 of them in a bit more detail, but the other ones are shown in the slide deck, should you wish to look at them later. The first primary one, if you like, is called the supply chain visualizer. This gives all of the users in the supply chain, SSCN, also their partners, their suppliers, a real-time visibility of exactly what's happening to critical components within that supply chain, where they are, what materials will go into those components, what the machine is doing at the time of manufacture, QA, processes, delivery times, and that sort of thing. You can see there's quotes from various stakeholders we spoke to. So the project manager really wants to know what's happening in the supply chain. So if there are any delays, they can actually do something about it in a timely fashion. The key features of this gadget are dashboarding, inventory tracking, production schedules, capability, and delivery tracking. The second most highest priority gadget was called the Supply Insights Checker and Onboarder. So one thing that's needed in this industry is more suppliers of these materials. And a lot of that onboarding is a very manual process at the moment. Suppliers don't quite know what they're going to have to do to comply to the requirements of the energy sector. They don't necessarily know what opportunities lie ahead of them. Conversely, the energy sector need to make sure they onboard suppliers who are able to trade in the UK, have all the right credentials, quality assurance. And so this is what this gadget's all about. It's about connecting suppliers to the opportunity and to the consumers. The main features of this feature are supply registration, order, project specification submission, due diligence, and supplier risk assessment. Next slide, please. The third gadget that I'll talk about in a little bit of detail here is what we call the consolidated order book. It was clear for many of the stakeholders that there isn't this common vision of what even all of the UK's requirements are going to be, let alone Europe, let alone the world. So there's absolutely a requirement for a sort of common order book that all transmission suppliers in the UK or energy providers, all that sort of thing, can understand what the demand is, submit their demand, such that all players, so suppliers who may wish to set up business in the UK, existing ones, and also potentially government organizations can understand in a consolidated form what the entire order is going to look like for the next sort of 5 to 10 years or so. The key features of this are visualization, data representation, forecasting, predictive analysis, data segregation, and of course, security. The other gadgets, which I won't go through in detail now, but are shown here for completeness, are the standards parts picker. Next slide, please. Digital QA test and audit gadget, and risk manager gadget. So as I said, these are available in the report if you would like to know more. I think that's the end of my slide. So next slide, please.
So the potential benefits, kind of broken this up into 3, but the supplier demand, through understanding the demand on the supply chain, it gives the buyer real insight into their project delivery schedule and the wider market, and can help the buying organization understand where they fit into the supply chain schedules, giving greater clarity on real delivery timescales. The supplier capacity, by having real-time visibility into component parts, it gives the opportunity to see real-time production schedules, processes, and delivery times. Understanding any blockers gives new entrants the insight of market needs and the potential to move to the market quicker and give alternatives to the supply chain. And it proactively maps the supply chain and allows the market to be ahead of any potential disruptions. And in the categorization, having a core database of standard products from a range of suppliers allows consistency across the market and identifies deviations from any of those standard specifications. A digital audit trail would also be part of that, and it would show any core component parts and would allow a digital quality assurance on these parts to ensure compliance. All these potential benefits should equate to an enhanced operational efficiency by engaging the right supplier at the right time, reduce lead times by knowing demand across the marketplace, and mitigate any risks and enhance resilience. Next slide.
All right, so given the learnings that this project provided around efficiencies and how we could secure and make more robust those key component requirements supply chain, being discussed here, the case of the HVDC cables, right, to enhance the delivery. We foresee that some of the key activities that in the future should be considered are, first, provide further market research and wider supply chain stakeholder engagement. Second, the development and experimentation around the high priority blocks of capabilities or gadgets detected and the technologies associated. And finally, an in-depth exploration of those real commercialization options that we could explore. Next slide, please.
Well, thanks, Nastasia, sorry. So what next? At this point, we've decided to defer an offer application in the next round, which would be next month. And we haven't taken this decision lightly. We've had various reviews internally, and the feeling at the moment within SSENT is the further discussions are required within the key teams to mature the requirements for any offer application. So what we certainly don't want to do is put something in that's rushed and not fully considered. So the plan moving forward is to mature the project definition. And between now and then the next round, which we would anticipate would be a similar time to next year, and put in an application at that point in time. And so in the meantime, we've decided as a group of partners to have a regular catch-up, a monthly catch-up, just to share developments and kind of keep things ticking over, in preparation for that. So that concludes our presentation. So we're happy to take any questions now. Thank you.
Waiting for some questions to come in. Right. No questions. Oh, here we go. Would you consider adding a capability to allow performance data to be fed back into the system?
Something you could pick up, Peter, maybe being, from a tool perspective, gadget tool.
So could you repeat the question? You just slightly broke up for me. Say again, what was the question?
Would you consider adding capability to allow performance data to be fed back into the system?
Oh yes, absolutely. So one of the ideas, one of the actual features of a gadget was to sort of allow digital twinning, if you like. So one of the things that is often apparent in the sort of supply chain is that the supplier of a given component, once they've sold it, have no idea how it's used in market and how it lasts, how it's serviced. And one of the key benefits of the reason that suppliers might want to play in this game is to get insights as to how their equipment is being used actually in market. So 100% absolutely, we'd love to take sort of digital twin it, collect information both in terms of maintenance, support, how it's installed, and then feed that back and bind that to the record of the particular given item. So yes, indeed.